This is the Dover Download Podcast. My name is Christopher Parker, and for the past 25 years, I've had the pleasure of working with, learning from, and talking to a variety of volunteer, staff, and community members. This podcast explores conversations, activities, and a variety of policies and programs which exist here in Dover to improve the community in one way or another. We have entered 2025, and the work and business of our various boards, committees, and commissions here in Dover has not subsided. In fact, it's been a pretty busy January. I'm going to start with Erin Massaggio from the Planning Department, and she will walk us through what's going on in the land use world. Welcome, Erin.
Thanks, Chris. I'll start with the Master Plan Steering Committee that met for the first time this month. This steering committee will be guiding the land use chapter update of the master plan. And the first meeting was primarily to identify emerging trends in the city, things that have changed since the chapter was last updated in 2015, and overall just kind of establishing a baseline for where the steering committee is at and planning the update project ahead.
The land use chapter for so long was like the bedrock. That's the only chapter that really mattered. I almost think in some ways the vision chapter now has that position. Not that the land use chapter is reduced, but how much of the upcoming land use chapter will reference the pillars that were established in the vision?
So I'd say all of the chapters really look at the vision chapter as kind of the guiding light of the whole document. The land use chapter is, of course, focusing on physical development within the city, to use the phrase, the use of the land within the city of Dover. So we'll be looking at the vision chapter, but of course, establishing independent recommendations based on what we're talking about as a steering committee and what we hear from residents.
Cool.
And over the next year that project is going, we'll, of course, have more information to share and looking for public input the whole way through. The annual Land Use Boards meet and greet was also held in January. That is an annual event, an opportunity for all the land use boards to share kind of a year in review from the previous year and looking ahead what projects they're planning. It's also a good opportunity just to hear from each other directly what other committees and commissions are working on and to recognize the city volunteers and the work that they do. And the planning board had 2 meetings in January. The first meeting of the year was more kind of an organizational meeting, an election of officers. Gina Cruikshank was reelected chair, and Doug Glennon, who's a new member to the planning board, was elected vice chair. They heard a presentation by me on the conservation and open space chapter that was recently completed, and the board did review the chapter and adopted it. The board also heard an update on a completed natural resource inventory for the city. So both of these documents, the master plan chapter and the NRI, will certainly be used moving forward for conservation planning for the city. And finally, the board held a discussion on potential land use amendments and overall goal setting for the year ahead. At their second meeting of the month, it was back to regular business. They had a number of applications they were considering. They did hold a site visit on January 11th related to an application they were hearing. This is a TDR proposal at 103 Court Street. The version of the application they heard at the meeting was a little scaled back from previous iterations, and this was after resident feedback, board feedback, and staff feedback to the applicant. And the final version of the proposal, which Planning Board did approve, was 5 residential units at the site. This was a decrease in units from previous proposals.
That's the final version of the TDR application, not the site plan application.
Correct. The applicant will have to come back for further review with a site plan application. That will have to go through technical review committee before it goes to Planning Board. And Planning Board can request decreased units, even though they approved up to a certain amount. They can amend or request for decreased units as part of the site plan approval. There were 4 applications related to a proposal at 114 Silver Street. This is a minor subdivision and a residential project that was approved by the planning board. So there's an existing home that was proposed and approved to be converted from 1 unit to 4. And then on the second lot, as part of the subdivision, new construction of a 4-unit structure on that lot. So again, this was approved by Planning Board, but within the Heritage Residential District where this project is taking place, a conditional use permit needs to be applied for, and the applicant needs to meet the criteria of the CUP. So the planning board found that the applicant did meet that criteria for both proposals, both residential structures, and approved those CUPs. And one last thing, at the planning board's next meeting on February 11th, there will be a discussion on both TDR and ADUs. This will be a general discussion for the board, but also looking ahead, potential recommendations for amendments for both of those topics, and just looking ahead for strategic goals for, again, both those topics.
Erin, thanks for that planning board update. Now let's talk to Brian about things that are not planning board or land use related and come back to any other updates from the land use world. So Brian, welcome and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Thanks, Chris.
We're still in January, so we can still make that statement. What's going on in the non-land use world? Where do you want to start?
I'll start with the school board. They kicked off the month with the adoption of their fiscal year 2026 budget that happened in early January after a couple months of budget review. This budget will now be incorporated into the citywide budget that the city manager will present to the city council on Wednesday, February 12th. And then following the city manager's budget presentation, the council will review different aspects of the budget before it crafts its final document to be adopted by April 15th. And the city council had 2 meetings in January. The first meeting was a pretty significant piece with the extension of the waste management contract for 7 additional years. The current contract ends at the end of this fiscal year on June 30th. And for the past few years, the Solid Waste Advisory Committee has been tasked with reviewing options, including whether the city should take over the operation itself. Now, Chris, there are not a lot of options on the table.
Yeah, I think you're right. And as we talked about with Dave Dinzio from the Solid Waste Advisory Committee earlier on the podcast, there is less and less opportunity, meaning there's less landfill sites, there's less waste haulers available, but also we continue to generate solid waste as a community, which everyone does. I'm not casting aspersions, but the market for recyclables has changed in the last 5 years. So there's less opportunity to go elsewhere. And so it becomes a more questionable conundrum, if that's a term, about what our opportunities are. And I think the SWAC, the ad hoc committee that was created to review the waste management contract, and the council all had before them questions, some answers, some opportunity, but they had to come up with the best option possible. And this extension of the current contract for 2 years and then a 5-year beyond that was really what was determined to be the really only option. And it'll be a pretty big change to switch from bag and tag to the automated system. And it'll be an interesting thing to follow because we won't be alone in this. There's a lot of communities out there that are going to be grasping with this same issue. To tie back to what Erin was talking about a little while ago, it's a land use question as well as a fiscal question that we all have to grapple with and work towards. Until we decide on a new technology implement for how to deal with solid waste in any of its forms, we need to address it. It's not a ship it out in the middle of the sea question anymore.
As you mentioned, the first 2 years will continue as they are, and then year 3 to year 7 would be in the toter system. Right. And it sounds like there's the next couple of years are going to be working on the actual ironing those details out.
Right. I think it's designed to give the community and waste management time to transition, because to get 9,000 toters out there or whatever the number is out there, and to allow for the using up of bags and things of that nature is something that needs to be figured out. It's a massive transition, and it's not as simple as saying, you know what, I was going to wear white chinos today. Instead, I'm going to wear black jeans. It's not that easy of a turnover. Not that anyone uses the word chino anymore, but you know what I mean.
If anyone's looking for a deep dive, the council held a workshop on the contract extension January 8th. And there was also, as Chris mentioned, and there was also the Dover Download podcast from mid-January that discussed this in depth as well. Council also voted to authorize the the renovations to the Dover Public Library, the renovation project, which is going to be adding an additional entranceway, kind of adding some meeting rooms and some space, upgrading the accessibility. The library is in transition into the McConnell Center, which will be open here by the time this podcast is out. The City Council also voted to authorize renovations to the Jenny Thompson Pool, which there's quite a few renovations they're planning on doing there.
Yeah, that pool is about as old as I am, no age given, and everything needs upgrades and work. And at this point, that the question about the level of work that's needed on that pool has been fleshed out, and we are working now with the contractors so that they are ready as soon as the pool season ends this Labor Day or thereabouts, that they can get in there and do the work. There's some lead time for material ordering, et cetera, but it's looking at the decking, it's looking at the filters, it's looking at a lot of components of the pool. We want to make sure that it is still relevant for the users, whether they be the swim teams or the general public, and that it's a safe environment for folks to use. So the recreation department as well as community services have hired some outside consultants to come in, review the work. Aaron actually was very helpful to get us a grant towards that for $500,000 from the Land Water Conservation Fund. So that is in the mix as well. And we're moving forward later this year and hopefully closure at the appropriate time and then able to reopen next year as desired and go forward.
Yeah, it sounds like the goal is to not impact the actual swim season.
Yep.
Another infrastructure milestone in January was the City Council voted to approve the rehabilitation and improvements to the Garrison Hill water storage tank. That's another one that's been in the works for quite some time. Deputy Mayor Dennis Shanahan noted that the project had been in the works since 2014. A lot of that has to do with, since that's the main storage tank in Dover, they had to find another storage tank to build.
Right. It needed to be timed so that the recent additional million-gallon tank at Webb Place was finalized and operational so that we could take off the 4 million gallon tank at Garrison, which is used for fire flow backup, but also for general needs. If you think about it in the morning when you turn on your shower to shower, you need water there. And so from the standpoint of timing, we needed to complete one project before we took on another. And so there's been some background work that's being done, site clearing, work like that. And as John said at the council meeting when the authorization was before the council, it's not as simple as turning off the spigot and doing the work. You have to drain down the tank, and it has to be ready to go for the contractor. So there's some work to be done, and the timeline is still being established for when that project will get underway.
Well, this is the first time it's being drained completely, I believe, right?
That's my understanding too, that some work has been done, but it's been the type of work that didn't need a full drain.
And lastly, the City Council at its January 29th meeting voted to accept the report by the Ethics Commission and schedule a special session on February 19th to discuss the Commission's findings and what next steps to take, if any. The Ethics Commission for the past couple months has reviewed, held a hearing, and deliberated on a complaint by a Dover resident, Caitlin Wilkie, against City Councilor Fergus Cullen. The Ethics Commission's report of findings was included in the January 29th City Council agenda materials.
Thanks, Brian. Aaron, are there any other non-planning board updates the listeners should be aware of? The Zoning Board, the Arts Commission, et cetera.
Both Arts Commission and Zoning Board met in January. Zoning Board heard two pretty straightforward variances, both residential requests, one regarding the primary structure identification on a lot and the other one involving power supply for an ADU. The Arts Commission did meet in January and discussed a number of ongoing projects, including the fundraising for the sculpture that they're proposing on Central Ave. I'd say that's the big thing that they're working towards in 2025, so we'll hear more about that soon.
Nice. And just to round us out, the Waterfront Committee met on the 21st, and they had an update on the public and private improvements that are occurring down on the waterfront site, and we're able to see the improvements because the committee met at the job site trailer for its meeting, and it had no real decisions to be made, but the intent of the meeting was to make sure that the members of the board saw firsthand the improvements that are being made, and the private improvements are still on track for opening later this year, and the public improvements are still on track for completion in the spring of 26. Thank you both for being here. I look forward to having a conversation next month when we see what boards and committees have accomplished in February. Dover has a wealth of history in its over 400 years of existence. Coming up, Mike Gillis is going to share some of that history with us.
This week, in 1925, Dover lost one of its most prominent citizens and industrial pioneers when Elbridge Gage passed away at his home on Huckleberry Hill along the Dover Point Road on February 1st. He was 68 years, 11 months, and 17 days old. Born in Dover in February 1856, Elbridge received his early education in Dover's public schools before learning the carpentry trade with the Hanson brothers, who operated a shop on Middle Street. While carpentry marked his early career, it was in brick manufacturing that Gage would make his most lasting impact on Dover's industrial landscape. Gage became one of Dover Point's most successful brick manufacturers, operating 3 yards and the largest brick-making operation by any single individual in the area. He specialized in producing water-struck bricks, which were in high demand in Boston and other major markets. His success in the industry came during a crucial period when Dover's brick-making trade was transforming from traditional methods to more mechanized production. The significance of Gage's work extends beyond his own yards. Dover's brick-making industry, which dates back more than 250 years to the early colonial period, was vital to the region's development. The city's rich clay deposits along its rivers made it an ideal location for brick production, with dozens of yards operating along these waterways. These bricks quite literally built the growing cities of New England, with many being shipped to Boston via schooners and barges. During World War I, Gage faced significant challenges when labor shortages made it nearly impossible to operate his brickyards. Adapting to the circumstances, he shifted his focus to agriculture, managing his 90-acre farm and developing a successful market gardening business. His farm products became well known in Dover's markets, demonstrating his ability to adapt and succeed in different ventures. Beyond his business achievements, Gage was an active member of the Dover community. He belonged to various civic organizations and was known as a reliable citizen who contributed significantly to local development. On February 4, 1925, a large gathering of friends and relatives attended Gage's funeral services at the Ricker Memorial Chapel at Pine Hill Cemetery, conducted by Reverend Leon Morse of St. John's Methodist Episcopal Church. The numerous floral tributes and attendance of family and community members testified to the respect he had earned throughout his life. His body was placed in a receiving tomb to await burial in the family lot at Pine Hill Cemetery in the spring, marking the end of an era in Dover's industrial history.
Thanks for listening to the Dover Download this week. If you like what you heard, subscribe through your favorite podcast aggregator. And if you have something you want to hear a topic on, let us know. Finally, this is just one of the many ways we share information about the city of Dover. You can subscribe to the Dover Downloads email newsletter every week or other newsletters that we have by going to the City of Dover homepage, www.dover.nh.gov. Have a great week.